On the exterior and do the housekeeping. That would have been considered the housekeeping. The archaeologist on site says this is already on the second level. So we're talking about 100 years plus of accumulation of soils and dirt over a time. This would have been a multi-family dwelling. Those wooden posts, all that, those are all original, as you'll see if you walk around behind you. If you see behind you there, those are all the pueblos. So you're going to see kind of the outline of how this pueblo was shaped. There were in fact two pueblos, a north and south pueblo. Basically different ideas as to why and how that might have evolved over a time. But nonetheless, this would have been a multi-family layered. It would have gone up multi-stacks high, just like you saw in the artist's rendition. And the lower levels would be used as a storage facility. One of the things that the Spanish did that you have to, well, we have to give them credit for, is that when they first started coming here, they started keeping meticulous records of these people, what they found, who they were, what were they doing, how they lived. And one of the things they quoted was that they estimated about 2 years worth of food supply already that these guys had saved in case of, in case of drought.
So it was obvious they'd seen bad times.
Yes, yes, but they've become adapted to it. So they know exactly how to live off of this earth.
What's amazing is, in that period of time, you were clearly at a subsistence level of living. You barely had enough time to make food and do the minimum. You didn't have time for recreation, except a few rich people. But they spent the time doing the record keeping, the Spaniards, and like the burying people. It had to take so long to bury a person, and they had to take time out from their other schedule to do that. Yeah. In the movies, they make it look like it doesn't take very long to bury someone when they have the movie, but it takes a lot longer to dig a 6-foot deep grave to keep the animals out than you realize. Because if you don't put it down 6 feet, the creatures come and dig it out.
Yeah, and there was different forms with different cultures, how they approach that,
Because a lot of them, didn't they put them up on platforms and burn them after so long, the bodies?
As certain tribes, they did do that. I think that's further north. In the northern region, I'm going to say in the Dakotas, Montana, up in that area, those tribes. Don't quote me on that, by all means.
It may have been where it was a lot harder to dig, where it was cold most of the year and frozen, or like in the mountains where it was so hard and rock, you just couldn't dig a hole. The movie I remember is Jeremiah Johnson had those in Jeremiah Johnson, but that's up in high in the mountains, to where you really be hard to press to do anything but throw rocks on top of a body.
Right.
And if you do that, animals are going to dig them out for sure.
Right, exactly. Well, I just wanted to point out a few things here because, again, this is all related to adaptation to different cultures and the relationships within. Now, a lot of the rooms here, the doorways would have been on the second level, nothing on the first level, so you'd climb up on the ladder to your levels for sleep and living quarters. The doors would have not been very high, and it's not because they were necessarily small. But we were talking about the weather here, how cold it can be, or how hot it can be, or how windy it can be. Those doors actually were used as a function for that. So that was an adaptation to the environment. But also, if you're being raided, being on the second floor would bring on benefits. Can anybody think why?
You got the high ground.
Got the high ground. That's right.
Yeah, that's the most obvious, isn't it?
Always want the high ground.
That's the most obvious.
In small openings, they're easier to defend than big openings.
Exactly. Yeah. So one way, you'd just be lifting up the ladders, and then you're aiming down into the fishbowl effect. Two, if you had a small entryway, and you were either another native culture, a conquistador, and you're coming here to kill, you'd have to bend down to climb in. And if you're in here, you've got a rock, boom. So that makes for a good defense, in order to save your life. And it's one at a time, not a whole army, one at a time as a defense. It was a fighting chance. And later on, in the 1700s, when the Comanche comes, all bets were off. And they were a whole different group. But
they were bad.
In the meantime,
And
it
they're
was a good
experts on
fighting
horses too.
Horses,
They
bad
had
on
horses by
horses.
this. Now, is this the real original here? All this stuff here, or is this all restored?
it's restored at this point in game.
And so, but
But the foundations of the original are all
so
here.
they had these really wide walls
Yes.
to keep it cool in the summer and warm in the winter.
Absolutely. The walls were thick and rock,
And by
so it
having
had been
the
packed with mud.
by having the clay and the rock, it's like an insulation because you're changing stratus, so it's harder for the heat to get through.
Exactly.
Just like people did in Appalachia on their log cabins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.